Hi everyone, it's Lynn Dion here from Pink Whisper Designs. Today we're going to make this fun nautical themed card with this beautiful tropical window. So let's go ahead and get started. First we'll grab this largest die from the Rectangle A2 double stitch die set from Art Impressions, and I'll be die cutting that out of the Strathmore Bristol Smooth 100-pound cardstock. So we're going to create the front panel for our card. So I'll tape this down to my glass media mat just temporarily while we do a little bit of stenciling here. And that'll just hold it in place while we do our stenciling. So now I've got the Lawn Fawn Plaid stencils, and this is a 2-piece set. And we're going to take that one there that has the wider lines. And then what we're going to do is just turn it so it goes straight across our card. And I'm lining up one of those lines right along the bottom of that card panel. That way I can be sure it'll be nice and straight. So I'm taping that down with a little bit of purple tape here. I just want to make sure it doesn't move around on me. And then we'll stencil all the way up to here because that next line doesn't go all the way across. So we'll have to move the stencil one time here. So I'm just going to cover that entire area up there so that I don't make a mistake and stencil there by accident. So now I've got my Hero Arts mini ink pads, and I'm going to grab that navy blue. And we're going to create this navy blue striped background. I'm using my Picket Fence Studio Life Changing brush. I'm using kind of one of the smaller ones here. And I'm going to just start adding that navy blue ink. So I'm just going to come in from the sides. You can pat it off on your glass media mat first if you're worried that you have a little bit too much. But it does blend pretty easily, especially on this Strathmore Bristol Smooth cardstock. So you'll get a nice blend, and I wanted it to be fairly dark. So I'm going to go over this a few times just to make sure I have a nice deep blue color. So I'll finish filling that in here. And then once I finished all of those stripes, I'm going to need to move that stencil. So I'll go ahead and lift that up. Now you can see that I had a little bit of bleeding there that went through. So I'm using my Mono Sand Eraser, and I'm just going to remove that before I position my stencil again. And that'll easily remove any excess ink that you might have had. So let me go ahead and heat set this just to be sure everything's dry before I put this stencil back down. And I'm just trying to figure out where I want the rest of those stripes to be. So again, I'm using the lines that are already there to make sure this stays nice and straight all the way up to the top here. I'll position the tape back in place, and I can finish off that stenciling. So once that's all set, I'll remove the stencil, and you can see this beautiful navy blue background, striped background that we have. So I'll go ahead and heat set that again. Now let's grab this stamp set from Art Impressions. This has this beautiful lighthouse scene, and you get 3 different stamps with this, and that's to create your Circlet. This is a mini trifold Circlet stamp set. Now you do get some coordinating dies for these 2 stamps here, and we're just going to be using 2 of the stamps today. But there are several examples of the trifolds on the Art Impressions website, so you can always check that out. So I'm starting off with the stamp that has the little fence on it. I'm going to go ahead and stamp that with the Versafine Onyx black ink, and I've placed it in my mini MISTI stamp positioner. I'm just prepping that stamp a little bit with my fingers, just kind of rubbing on that just to get rid of any film that might be on the stamp. And then I'll get a nice crisp stamping. So now let's grab the coordinating die and tape that down with some purple tape. And then I can go ahead and run this through my Sizzix Sidekick machine. And this will create the window to the inside of the card. This is just step 1 though. We have a few more things we need to do. So let's go ahead and color this in. And I'm starting off with the green-gray. These are the Zig Clean Color Real Brush pens. And these are water-based markers. And I'll use that blender pen there to do my blending. So I'm just scribbling it onto some scrap paper just to make sure that it's clean before I get started. And then I'll just do some simple blending here. The nice thing with these little trifolds is there's not a lot of coloring. It's really quick and easy to do. I'm just adding some shadowing here down at the bottom. And to color in the sand, I'll be using the beige and mid brown. And all of the colors I'm using today will be listed in that upper left-hand corner as we go along. So I'll start with the beige, and then I'll add a little bit of that mid brown just for a little bit of shadowing here. And this is one of my favorite combinations. These two colors just, the mid brown gives a really nice shadowing to this beige color. So now I want to add a little greenery here with the deep green, just a little touch of it. And then I'll just blend that out really simply here. So now that that's all set, I'm going to cut this out, and I don't need this to be perfect. I'm going to leave a little tiny edge around. I'm not cutting right on that black line because I don't want it to get too close to the edge there. So I'm going to leave just a little tiny white border around that black line. This is going to get tucked behind our tropical frame, so don't worry if it's not perfect. So let's go ahead and create the card base. Again, I'm going back to the Strathmore Bristol Smooth cardstock, and this measures 5.5 by 8.5, and I'm scoring that at 4 1/4. I'll just press out that fold with my bone folder here, and that'll be the card base. So I'm going to go ahead and glue this striped background right on the front of the card. I'm using my Nuvo Deluxe adhesive, and I'll go ahead and glue that in place. So now we can glue our frame here. Again, I'm going back to that Nuvo Deluxe adhesive, and I want to make sure I put a little bit of glue all the way around that narrow edge there, just to make sure that stays in place. Again, that's going to get hidden by our tropical frame, so don't worry too much here. And then I'll just place that up towards the top of the card. Now, once that's all set and dry, I'm going to die cut the opening to the inside of the card now. So we've already die cut it once. This little die will fit right into place there. It'll lock right into place. You want to open up your card and run it through your Spellbinders Platinum 6 die cutting machine. And I ran it through a couple of times just to make sure that cut all the way through. And so that creates the window to the inside of the card now. So I'm placing the card closed inside my MISTI just so I can use that magnet to hold it down while I trace out that circle. And that's going to help me position the next stamp that we're using. So I'm going to go to this one here, and I'm going to place it right along that pencil mark. So the circle portion I'll place along the pencil line. And now I know it'll be lined up perfectly behind that little opening. I'm just double checking that just to make sure that I have it lined up exactly where I want it to be. Once I'm sure that it's where I need it to be, I'm going to go ahead and pick up that stamp, and now I can erase that pencil mark. I'm using my Statler eraser. That won't leave any marks on the paper, and I'm just getting rid of any excess there, and I'm using my Nuvo Surface Sweep brush to brush away any excess there. Once that's all set, let's go ahead and stamp this next image. Again, going back to the Versafine Onyx Black ink. And this has a beautiful sentiment on it. It says, wishing you strength for today, wishing you hope for tomorrow. I just love that. I think that's just so nice. If you're just thinking of someone, or even for a sympathy card, that would be really beautiful. So now I've gone to my light gray, and I'm going to just add some little shadows here around these clouds, and then I'll go to the haze blue and add a little bit of that light blue to the sky. And then later on we'll add a little sparkle to those clouds with a glitter pen. So I'm adding a little bit of shadow here along the water line. And then I've got the Cobalt Blue, so I'll start coloring in that ocean. I'm going to add a few different colors here. And again, this is really simple coloring. Just kind of blending that out, spreading that ink out a little bit. So next I'm going to use the Persian blue. I'm adding a few little shadows here. I'm sort of following along with the shadows that the stamp already has. So just you can follow that where the darker pattern is there and where those waves are, and just add a little shadow here. Just kind of pull it out to the sides as well. And then let's add one more color. We're going to add the deep blue. This is actually going to give us a little bit of blending here and give us kind of a purpley tone. Now, if you don't want that purpley tone, you can skip that. Just stick to your blues, but I just wanted to add a little bit more interest here, just a little bit more color. So I'll blend that out really quickly. So let's go ahead and do the sails on our little ship. And I'm going to switch to the deep red. I'm scribbling off any excess. If you get too much ink on your blender pen, just grab it and scribble it onto your scrap paper. Now I'll take the beige to do the boat, the bottom of the boat there. Now I've got my Wink of Stella glitter gloss pen, and I'm adding that glitter to the clouds. As I mentioned earlier, this is just going to add a really pretty sparkle when you look in from the front of the card into the center of the card. And that just added a lot. I'll try to give you a closer look at that, and hopefully you can see that sparkle there. We'll let that dry. Now let's grab the Magic Iris Tropical Leaves add-on die set from Lawn Fawn, and you get this beautiful tropical wreath, but you also get these little embellishments as well. You get some extra leaves and some flowers as well. So I'm going to go ahead and run that through the die cutting machine, again using the Strathmore Bristol Smooth cardstock. And then I've got my Hero Arts mini ink pads in the Sea Aqua. And there's 4 in that little set. And I'm going to be using all 4 of these. So I've got my blender brush, and I'll start blending the colors in. And I left the die in the cardstock. It's just going to make it a lot easier for me to ink this up. It's not going to be moving around as much, and I can kind of get around those delicate areas a little bit easier. So if you can, just leave your cardstock right in the paper itself, and then we'll push it out once we're done with our coloring. And I did the same thing for the flowers as well. And you'll see how much easier this is to do your blending with. So again, I'm quickly adding different colors. I'm not being real fussy here, just kind of adding random shades of color here and there, just to give it some interest here. And just going back to that lighter color just to do a little bit of blending there. And this is, again, the Strathmore Bristol Smooth cardstock. So let's go ahead and do these little leaves that we die cut. Those little leaves will just add some extra dimension to the tropical frame. Now I'm going to go to the Hero Arts Rose Petals mini ink pad set, and I'm going to grab 3 of those. So these little sets are nice because you get all the colors you need to do some really nice blending. So I'll start with that lighter color, and I've grabbed my teeny tiny little life-changing brush here. And I'm just going to add that color, and that little brush is going to allow me to start adding some colors to the center of this flower. So here I'm going to start in the center and just push out a little bit of ink, leaving those edges the lightest. And then I'll take this darker tone and just add that to the center. So now I'll push out these little flowers. I colored all those in, and I'll push those out for now because I want to do a little bit of spattering on the tropical leaves here. So I'm going back to that darkest green in that set, and I'm placing a little bit of that color on my glass medium matte, I'll spritz it with some water from my Distress sprayer, and I'll spatter these leaves. I'll set that aside to dry, and now I've got my Sizzix sculpting tools and my mat. So this is like a foam mat that you can use to press these flowers a little bit. So I've got this sculpting tool that has the little ball tip on both ends. And I'm just using both ends for the different sizes of the flowers. And for the flowers, you just want to press right down in the center. That's all you need to do, and they'll pop up nicely. And for the leaves, I'm just pressing them a little bit, and you can flip them over and press them in different directions, just again to give them a little bit more dimension. So now that those are all set, I can go ahead and add my tropical frame to the front of the card. And you can see that's going to cover that little circle that we had previously cut out. So don't worry that that wasn't perfect. So I did decide that I wanted to make that frame a little bit thicker. So I went ahead and die cut a second frame, and I'm going to glue these together. I just felt it needed a little bit more substance to it. Now, to take away that white edge, I'm going back to one of those little mini green ink pads, and I'll just brush some color all the way around there. So now I can go ahead and glue that to the card. And I just noticed I had some little pieces hanging off the back there, so I'm just moving those away with my fingers. And now adding the glue and attaching this. And if you open up the card, you can really see that you have it lined up perfectly just by kind of shifting that around a little bit. And that's a good reason to use the glue, because it gives you a little time to move that frame around. And it fits perfectly on this little mini trifold. So once I have that pressed into place, I'm going to place a few heavy objects on top of it and let that dry. So now that that's dry, I'm placing it in my MISTI. Again, I just like to use this as a second set of hands. I've just put the magnets down. This will just hold the card closed while I do the layout of my flowers and leaves here. So I'm going to just go back to that Nuvo Deluxe adhesive and start gluing these down. Now I'll grab those extra leaves that we die cut, and I'll start tucking those in. And again, that's going to add a little bit more interest here. So now let's add a little sparkle to the center of the flowers. I'm using the Buttons Galore and More Sparkletz embellishments, and this one is called Barefoot Beach. So I'll take the pearl one, the larger pearl one for those larger flowers, and I'll take these like little rhinestone ones for the smaller flowers. Now I'm going back to my Wink of Stella glitter pen, and I'll add some glitter to each of these flowers. And that'll make these just pop out a little bit more, give them a little bit more interest. So next we'll add a little bow to the front of our little tropical wreath. And I just took 2 pieces of white twine and tied a bow out of those, and I'll attach those to the front of the wreath here. And I just want to mention that all the products I'm using today are listed and linked below, and also on my blog as well. So I'll go ahead and attach that and let that dry. So let's take a closer look at the finished card. And I just love those navy blue stripes. That gives it such a really nice nautical theme. And this beautiful wreath and the scene. The scene is just gorgeous. And these little mini trifolds are just so much fun. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please hit the like button and subscribe. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so that you don't miss a single video. As always, thank you so much for joining me today. I really do appreciate it. Take care. Bye-bye.